Hey, everybody, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. Got another great show for you today. I've got Chuck Coxhead. He is with a company called Koaxis, but this guy, he is just in the know on all things manufacturing. And we haven't had a broad manufacturing discussion in forever. So that's what Chuck and I are going to do today. Promise you it's going to be good. He's going to be here with us in just a few seconds. So stick around here on Manufacturing Talks.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky. I'm really glad to be joined by Chuck Coxhead today. He is general manager at a company called Koaxis that he's going to tell us about. And we're going to talk about lots of stuff in the manufacturing world. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, sir.
Glad to have you here.
It could not be any better to be here.
Awesome. Well, and so like so many of my guests, we met online and had a great discussion up front. So I've really been looking forward to this because I know you do these kinds of things. So you're going to bring us some really excellent conversation. But I just really want to dive into kind of current state of the manufacturing world with you. But before we do that, why don't you tell us about your background and yourself and how you got doing what you're doing?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've done about everything in manufacturing you can do except be an accountant. And yeah, that's about it.
Probably a good thing, right?
I'd like to say it's really about all that I know. But I've done so many aspects of it that, frankly, the fact that I'm here as a general manager just seems to make sense. From the time I started as an industrial engineer and jobs over Christmas break in a manufacturer, all the way up through engineering manager, getting into sales, joining the dark side.
Wow.
And sales and marketing and helping to turn around this business, frankly, and e-commerce and computing and ERP and all these different things. It's just, I guess it's just a love affair. It really is just a love affair. I just love being able to be a part of building something.
You're preaching to the choir right there, my friend. Absolutely. I hear you. Now, I've never gone that far afield. I've been in engineering and maintenance and on the floor of the manufacturing plants, but I've never done sales. That's interesting.
Well, that's a completely different world.
Oh, yeah.
It's a completely different world. So, but it's a crucial world. With all of us, we all have a go-to-market strategy, and we're going to get into the state of manufacturing, and it's frankly, it needs some help. It needs some help, in my near humble opinion. So.
All right. Well, before we go there, tell us a little bit more about Koaxis.
Well, we are an RF cable assembly house. We make what are known as RF coaxial cables. Most of the business is for defense. This is a kind of the product that's really, really boring, but goes into really, really cool things.
Yeah.
Like Navy ships and drones and quantum computers and crazy things like that. And these are behind the scenes little cable assemblies, basically. Yeah. And we've been in business for over 30 years. We originally started out in selling cables for cable TV infrastructure, and cable TV business has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. And we made a shift some years ago to shift to a different aspect of the product line and a different market. Frankly, had we not, business wouldn't be here. But based on what we did, we executed an extraordinary turnaround. So much so now that the business, honestly, we're just scaling. When others are flat, we just heard about a layoff in a company in a similar product line. Literally just heard about it today while I'm busy giving job offers to scale. And it's a function of how we go to market and a function of the way we do things. We do things differently. And so we're going to keep doing it and scaling the business and keep doing our part of it to help the world in these really cool applications to keep warfighters safe, really.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And you hit on a couple of really critical points. One is that there's all these kind of, on the surface of things, mundane things that producers make out there like you guys do. And like you said, that go into really cool things. And to me, one of the beauties of manufacturing is it's so distributed and people don't really see that whole picture. That's how the market works. And so without you guys, there wouldn't be those cool warfighting machines and those things that keep our warfighters safe.
Yeah, well, and it's important for me to keep the focus on that for our workers as well.
Yep.
They do amazing work. I mean, our workers are, I describe them frankly as artisans because it's very difficult to do. And it takes a long time to learn how to do it really, really well. And I want to keep them motivated and inspired by what they do rather than making these products. Now, admittedly, there's billions and billions of different variations that they can be made. So it's always a little different, but essentially it's very, very similar on a daily basis. We got to keep them inspired. We got to keep them motivated. And I believe in that. And the way that we do that is through a number of things. But most importantly, help them to believe that they're part of something important because they are.
Absolutely.
It's not just the war fighters. I mean, there's other applications that we do related to quantum computing that is the forefront of technology that's just, so hard to even fathom, let alone understand for the everyday person. Frankly, I'm not there yet. And so many other things. So wireless communications, things that we all just depend upon. We just don't even give a second thought about. It's all there for us to help to make it a reality.
Well, and again, you're hitting on all these points that I just love. And one of them is that piece of how so many of the workers in the manufacturing world are doing things that most people can't even fathom and therefore don't understand the difficulties of, the complexities of. I just read some comments, they were from a few years ago by Michael Bloomberg, whose pocket change is more than my net worth, but who said something really incredibly stupid. And that was that he could just train anyone to do all the manufacturing jobs. No. No, you can't, Mike. That's dead wrong.
Yeah,
and that view of manufacturing is in a big way what has gotten us into the kind of trouble we're going to talk about here in a second.
And in fact, we say someone made a similar, although at a much, much lower scale, comment in our business. It's just two connectors on the end of a piece of cable, right?
Yep.
But nothing could be further from the truth. We live in a world where the technology is very complex. Folks even call it black art or black magic in a sense in our world, the RF and microwave world, in that there are minute variations in product. People think in terms of, say manufacturing tolerances or that sort of thing, but they are so minute that they're not even measurable in our world. So we live in a world of actually probabilities where you get the parts very, very precise and you develop a very important and meaningful set of skills so that you can raise your probability the product is going to be good. And sometimes it's bad and our yield is very, 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 very high. But sometimes when it's bad, we literally have zero idea why. We cannot tell what the reason is. We can say, oh, it's the cable or it's connected. We can't get it down there and say this dimension is off or something to that effect. It's so minute that it's literally unmeasurable. And that's why people consider it to be black art, if you will, in our world.
Well,
those skills cannot just be taught to anyone on the street.
No.
You're wrong, Mike. You're brilliant, but you're wrong on that.
Well, and you're talking about something that's high tech, and I think people would totally get that's going to be something that's difficult and not something just anyone can walk off the street and do. But I'll tell you, I've talked recently with folks in the apparel world, and they're talking about how difficult it is to even try to reestablish apparel manufacturing in America because there's no one who can sew right anymore. There's no one who can fix the automated machines that sew. And so trying to reestablish an industry that's gone overseas is beastly difficult for those same reasons. Different kind of reasons, but still the same. You can't teach anyone off the street to do this stuff.
Yeah, but their only concern was costs, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that was their worry. They were worried about the costs.
And you're bridging us right into one of the main topics I wanted to hit with you, which is the general state of manufacturing today. So give us kind of that 10,000 foot level, and then we can dive in from there.
Well, I think it's as varied as there are as many different numbers of industries that would consider themselves to be manufacturing. Every one is somewhat unique, but we all suffer or enjoy from similar issues. So one is skills. What does it take to get that done? The other is what are the priorities of the company and the sector as a whole? people so often mistake the fact that it's all about cost. And frankly, we find out when the global mess happened some years ago. I won't even say the word. Okay, when the global mess happened some years ago, we think, oh, sometimes it's not really just about cost. And that's just one small example of what it could be about. In our world, performance is king, and subtle differences, right? You can't just go to some low-cost provider and expect the same thing. There's geopolitics involved. There's global economics involved. There are all kinds of things that compliance activities that are involved. Again, it's as varied as the number of industries that call themselves manufacturing. But those same things, those same issues, we all suffer from them. But we're getting lost in short-sighted objectives. Yes, economics is crucial. Sure, folks. Economics always wins, and economics is more complex than just the lowest price. Yeah. And that's what drove a lot of the quote-unquote globalization or the offshoring is, well, we can just do it cheaper. Now, that may be true in some. When you think about a consumer product, that may very well be true. In a B2B product, okay, in a high-performance product, in something that is very, very specialized, folks suffer from the same mindset. It's just about the cost. Mm-hmm. And those are the economics they worry about. They forget about the economics of opportunity costs. Yeah. They forget about risk to the supply chain. They forget about what happens if we do have some sort of global event. What happens if we do have a labor hiccup? Mm-hmm. How will we recover? And that is the current state. The business is full of amnesia. Yep. They forget things that they've learned in the past. Now, I've got enough gray hairs in my beard or gray whiskers in my beard to have experienced a lot of these different things. And thankfully, my memory isn't shot yet. Right. But I live them and breathe them and feel them every day. And I, if I don't remember history, I'll be doomed to repeat it. Yep. I think that's our problem. We're just misfocused on, myopic economics.
One thing I've attributed that to, I call it MBA disease. It's that putting accountants in charge of everything. Mm-hmm. To me, Boeing is the perfect example of that right now. And I mean, you went through that laundry list of all the things that could go wrong. It's like every one of them has hit Boeing in the last.
Every one of them has hit Boeing. Oh my gosh, and more. And I feel that because in a big part of their business is a similar industry to my own. Mm-hmm. So although we are a much smaller value proposition than they are, value added to the product, and that's exactly what they're living. But they're don't need to worry about it. We know better. I guess and it's maybe it's lucky I didn't get an MBA. I don't think that's right.
Very much that we know better attitude of people who aren't close to manufacturing, who then don't get the full effect of their decision making. Mm-hmm. And so they're making decisions based on very incomplete and oftentimes wrong input. And so the output's necessarily going to be bad. Mm-hmm. And so, you hear about these disasters from a quality perspective and just practices and procedures perspectives at Boeing. And it's just, to me, emblematic of that whole, 2-decade history now we have of the accountants running the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I confess, while I've worked for a very big company, Lucent Technologies, some couple of decades ago, my perspective is primarily on small and medium manufacturing businesses. That's where I love to be.
Yeah, beautiful.
I've not run a large business like that, and the environment, the pressures, and the objectives are very, very different. But I'm gonna misquote or butcher a wise person. All right, K from the original Men in Black movie. I know, right? Well, that's the sum total of my brilliance comes from movies, whatever.
Do you need any more?
No. A person is smart, but people are stupid, nervous, blah, 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 with all the different things he said.
Yep.
And that's what happens when you have the pressures of a large company, right? You get this groupthink that goes along with it, and your decision by committee goes along for the ride, and the myopia of shareholder value versus actually taking care of the customer is the primary priority. These things get lost in the difference between a small business, a medium business, and a large business.
Yep.
And so I confess that I don't have all the answers. That's clearly evident.
Well,
but
and you made that
the principles are
distinction
the same, Jim.
Right. But you made that distinction between the big corporations versus the small and medium size enterprises. And I think that's crucial. I think there's something you see with the corporate world you don't see in the smaller businesses around how people get kind of fat, dumb, and happy when times are good and don't realize the damage that they're doing for when times turn bad again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'll go back to Lucent Technologies, for whom I used to work.
Mm-hmm.
They were, back in the year 2000, 1999, they were the stock market equivalent of Netflix, Apple, blah, 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 whatever the big six. Yep. Lucent was it. My family members used to talk about Lucent Technologies at Thanksgiving dinner table because I worked there. And the phrase too big to fail has come about. These people literally invented the backbone of the internet and more things that we rely on every single day. One might have used them that they're too big to fail at the time. They are long gone. They are history. And I've learned that everything has a life, and it doesn't matter how big you are. Everything has a life. Every business has a life. But it's only if the business continues to stay hungry and evolve over time.
Well, yeah. And you made that point with
life will be lengthy.
Koaxis right now, right? Yeah. You guys have made a significant change to survive.
Yes. And it was either do or die.
Yeah.
Do or die.
And you saw that coming well enough in advance where you had time to make the change too, right? Which is also crucial.
Thank the good Lord we did. We needed to. It's one of those things. We not really sure you have the answer. So what are we going to do? We're actually going to go more horizontal. We're going to do more things. Okay. We're going to add more products, that sort of thing. If that continues, and I've seen a lot of companies do it, they become jack of all trades, master of none. They lose focus. They lose their differentiation. And inevitably, it does not work. Fortunately, we went the other way. We did other things, and then we recognized what the market was doing in the future. Yes, you roll the dice. Yes, you go and experience and gut instinct. Absolutely. So there was luck, clearly, but also some vision. The vision said, go wider, but you know what? We need to get away from this other stuff we were doing, and we need to go narrow again. We went very narrow. And differentiated and stayed extremely focused, laser focused, and did just the opposite. Everybody else, wider and wider, new products. We got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We're like, nope, more and more and more narrow. We don't feel the need to be like everybody else. And that made a huge, huge difference. It was more than the product shift. It was the mindset, the business model, the business focus, and the differentiation. That was really what it was about.
Yeah, and you mentioned one core piece that people are almost afraid to face up to, and that is the fact that luck is a factor.
Oh, they can pretend it's not, but they're just the only one who's kidding is themselves. Yeah, it's luck guided by experience.
We talk repeatedly about Kodak, and people who aren't aware of the reality will often say, well, geez, this big company Kodak, masters of the universe, completely missed the coming of the digital camera. No, they didn't. In fact, they were part of inventing the digital camera. They had it as core technology, recognized as potential for the future, but they did not have that widening that you referred to, that breadth to be able to continue with their core business and develop that new technology that wound up swamping them.
Yeah, and truth be told, what happens a lot nowadays, and I'm sure it's happened in the past. I mean, I only have the benefit of my 30 plus years in industry to really say, okay, I know what the heck is going on.
In hindsight, it's always better too.
And I'm myopic as well, right? But what happens a lot nowadays, and I've seen other companies do this recently, is they expand, they create something new. Is it better to stay within the core business, or is it better to spin it off? Okay. Or at least have it operate semi-independently. Heck, we went through that here. We were looking at a new piece of business, and I told the owner, I said, if you want to do that, that's fine, but we've got to definitely divorce that, firewall that from the rest of the business. Create a new company, run it in a different building, a different part of the building, and I'll run this. Okay. That way we don't lose this. Right. Because when we go for, the million-piece order, right, it forces us to change our business model.
Yep.
And if that million-piece order is lost for a penny, there's no going back to my other business model because all the customer ill will that I've created.
Yep.
Right. I lose all that lower volume, high mix, amazing customer loyalty because I chased a dollar sign. You got to firewall it. But in these new companies like a Kodak, if they developed a digital camera, okay, should that have been firewalled into something else where they could pursue it with a smaller team, very focused, or was it diluted by everything else in Kodak? No, I don't know. Right. I wasn't there. Right. I don't have that level of big company experience. But that's the way a lot of things are going nowadays. And the best one, and the universities do it. Now the universities have become commercial enterprises. They develop all kinds of things. They don't roll it into the bigger university. They license it out, sell it off. They spin it off from the university, becomes a small business. And some survive and some don't. Yep. Big companies can do that too. Heck, small companies can do that too.
It is beastly difficult, though. I come out of the food and beverage CPG world.
Sure.
And we see it all the time where the big CPG companies struggle so much with innovation, and it's because they're going to be eating their own lunch. And I worked at General Mills, and we talked openly about that. We would come up with new products and fear that, geez, they're going to eat the core business, and if they don't succeed, then where are we going to be? So I'm by no means suggesting that these solutions are easy, or in some cases even doable.
Both. Yep. But we have a tendency to think incrementally, just to expand. I got a medium pizza. Let me get a large. Okay. And maybe I'll put stuffed crust around the outside. Right? Bottom line, it's still a pizza.
Yep.
Right. And somebody else can copy that.
Yep.
It's when you go from, a pizza to an apple pie, you're in a completely different world. But that is what these companies do. They make this incremental. They get themselves into a competitive leapfrog.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I can take this little step forward until somebody else catches up and jumps ahead of me, and now I'm playing catch up, and I have to. It's a never-ending game of leapfrog. One of these days, somebody's going to get tired. They're going to jump wrong, and they're going to lose. Right? Yeah. Companies need to think differently, and so and I can think in the food and beverage world, right? Doing something that's massively different. Look. 5 Hour Energy is a beautiful one for me.
Yeah,
Red Bull is and don't get me wrong, I'm not a food and beverage guy.
Right.
But when I see different, I see different.
Yep.
5 Hour Energy, Red Bull, they're the king. They're the category queen. They started this craze of, energy drinks or whatever you want to call them. What did 5 Hour Energy do? It's not an energy drink. Not only is it not an energy drink, it's a shot, and their placement is at the front counter. It's at the checkout. Right. For an impulse buy. That is massively different. It's a different product. It's a different merchandising, which can be construed as a different business model, if you will. And there's only 3 ways to differentiate: different product or service, different business model, right, and different customer experience. They got the product, customer experience, and the merchandising quasi-business model changed. Okay. Therefore, they weren't trying to be Red Bull or Monster or any of these other folks. Now the other guys are all competing for the big aluminum cans, while 5 Hour Energy stands out there by themselves. They did something different, but in the end, they're still servicing the same need, the same value to the customer, just in a very different way. Not a better way, a different way.
Yep.
That is what folks need to do. They need to think differently. They need to act differently. That's what we did here. That's how we turned around the business. We created something where we changed the way the customers buy.
Yep.
We changed the business model for how they receive them.
Yep.
While the other folks are getting things in 8, 12, 16 weeks, sometimes longer. We're shipping product that's custom made in as little as 2 days.
Yep.
That's a completely different customer experience. And they can buy it through an e-commerce system that nobody had ever done before, but we did first. Now, it's not that we did the first e-commerce system ever. That's not that at all. We did it for our, prospective loyal fans.
Yeah.
We differentiated a new business model, a new customer experience. This is the way these companies need to think. Yep. I'm Cable Assemblies. Their energy drink. There's similarities.
Yep. Let's dive a little deeper now. What about American manufacturing in particular? What are your thoughts there, and what are the needs to improve?
Honestly, I think they're similar. The issue, in my mind, again, we're so stuck on cost, and we've got ourselves in this malaise because we were misguided by the thought that price is king. It still comes back to differentiating. I'm going to give a talk next week with a group of manufacturers, very old school machine shops. And we're talking about strategy differences. How are they going to market? Are they doing anything different for their customers? Are they differentiating among their competitors? Recognizing the machine shops, especially SMBs, tend to be somewhat regional versus very, very large, where you can have it shipped in from anywhere. Right. Are they doing something different? Or are they just sending a salesperson out with a telephone and a laptop and hoping that if they just knock on the door a million times, different things will come? Mm-hmm. Okay? Because if we walk into a machine shop, they have to look different. They have to feel different. They have to deliver something different. They have to create a different value. But Americans are stuck there. Now, as opposed to international, where they're just stuck on price is everything. Yep. Hey, can we outsource stuff here? Because the only thing that matters is, as long as your customer gets a lower price. If we think differently, think about the value, think about being different, and change the way we go to market, we can do better. But we have to shed decades of individual experiences. But the world has changed. The 21st century was not just getting past Y2K and hoping our clocks didn't destroy the world. Right. The 21st century, coincidentally, created a completely new set of economics, a completely new buying experience for the world. The internet really came to its own in the B2B world, not just specious entertainment uses. And American businesses have not embraced the differences. They have not embraced that people buy differently, that people think differently, but they're still doing the same old things. Yep. So I'm going to talk to that group about strategy and differentiation and value props, and frankly, how they've got to break the mold. I have a very good friend. He owns a machine shop. Grew up with him. Just saw him at a high school reunion. And I was talking about e-commerce. He owns a machine shop. And this was some years ago, maybe 7-8 years ago. Now it's 2020, fall of 2024 when we're recording this. And we're talking about e-commerce. And he said, yeah, well, I own a machine shop and we can't do that. Give that to our customers. And 7-8 years ago, I went out and did a quick internet search, and I found a couple of e-commerce programs that allow people to upload a drawing and get an estimate. Yep. Created not from a person. Okay. Now imagine what you can do 7-8 years later with technology. Yep. You have to give yourself permission to erase the whiteboard. Okay. I suffer. I don't benefit from my experiences. Sometimes I suffer from my experiences because they hold me back from that infinite mindset that Steve Jobs talked about. Yep. Now, if you go out and you do a search for e-commerce systems for machine shops, there's a whole bunch of them.
Right. Yeah. Going back to that need to be able to change and adapt. Mm-hmm. How about automation? We talked a little bit about the workforce challenge. We're all facing that. Where is your mind around how much of that can be addressed with more automation and where we're headed in that regard?
Wow. I started studying automation back in 1986.
Wow.
Okay. I laid hands on my first automated guided vehicle, which are now autonomous robots, in 1987. Okay. So I'm a geek for that stuff. Robotics. I was programming robotics in the late 80s. All right. Yep. I've worked for, again, Lucent Technologies, where we had a form of robotics manufacturing. I've been an absolute fan of it ever since. Interestingly enough, though, I work in a company where, because we do very, very high mix and low volume, automation is elusive. If you do 1 million of one thing, it's relatively simple to automate. It may be expensive to get up and running, but again, the return on investment and the long-term value, or time to value, are there without a problem. But so many manufacturing companies are high mix, low volume, especially in the B2B world. We consumers are fogged. Our perspective is fogged by B2C. We think of the things that are manufactured as things like digital cameras, because that's our sum total of the experience of a lot of the consumers in the country and the world. But in the B2B world, it's very, very different. And so some challenges cannot be automated and provide the same level of experience. We're still doing a tremendous amount of manual work because we do two pieces of things. Okay. But you can semi-automate, and that you can automate processes back to the machine shop. The machine shop is nothing more than a reusable semi-automated process. It's extensive setup, but the same basic equipment can do the job, and a person can monitor, but essentially run lights out. So I think there's a tremendous place for it, but we have to give it its proper perspective. Is it right for us? Should we be automating? That's a big question. Should we really be automating? And what if our business model changes? Understand that once we go to automation, our business model is essentially potentially locked in that, depending on how far we take it, we're stuck making 1 million of one piece.
Right.
Oh, but what if the winds change? Now if I need to do it's more difficult to prototype. I lose that ability. Now I have to outsource. Okay. Oh, my budget's tight. I got to outsource to overseas. Is the turnaround going to be fast enough? All these different things come into play. But I'm a huge fan of automation. I think it can solve the problems, or the challenges, let's put them that way, because they're not problems, if it's used the correct way. And there's two ways. Again, we think of widgets. If I'm making 1 million, it's a lot easier to wrap automation around it. If I'm doing the same physical motion, okay, whatever that might be, it might be product movement, it might be person movement, then we can automate or semi-automate that motion. I love autonomous mobile robots. Moving product across a factory with a person pushing a cart is just so antiquated. And autonomous mobile robots are essentially material movers. It's a similar motion repeated over and over and over and over and over again. And the costs are getting to the point where small businesses and medium businesses can afford it.
Yep.
And that's automation. So pick the spot where we're making the most movement, and let's focus on that. Then, of course, there's a safety aspect, right? Why did robotics take off in welding and automotive manufacturing? Safety. Safety, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Right. Then there are many other benefits, clearly.
Yep. One last question.
Sure.
Where's your head as far as reshoring goes?
I think that reshoring is crucial because of supply chain risk.
Yeah.
Particularly in B2B. I think it's crucial. It's going to be a lot easier to do that. The complications of shutting down ports because of strikes. That's a big deal. You can't get product. You now have an existential crisis on your hands.
Right.
These things are absolutely crucial. But again, we're still clouded by the judgment of cost. Yep. We're also clouded by the judgment of just in time. Just in time has made things very, 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 very difficult. Okay. But just in time is a lot easier. And so the risk to your schedule, okay, is much, much less if you have a supplier down the road.
Yep.
Versus something that needs to come in on a boat, or even if it's air, okay, something that's got to go through customs. You're held up a week. Oh, your schedule's lost. Just in time presents maximum risk to the customer schedule and hence the customer experience. So reshoring adds a lot of value if we think about the opportunity costs, not just the hard costs.
Yeah, and the total cost. People look at unit costs of a particular component, for example. That's not taking into account the kinds of supply chain disruptions we've repeatedly seen in the last 3-4 years. It's not taking into account the potential for big changes in what your unit cost is when things go awry overseas.
Well, here's one for my Here's one from my accountant friends. Does your system properly handle the differences in landed cost from multiple countries?
Right.
Landed cost is a big deal because of the variations amongst the different states. And I don't mean United States, I mean countries.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And their complex laws and taxes and duties and tariffs and all the different things, let alone customs and embargoes and restricted parties. Are you able to handle those things in your landed costs so you actually know what the heck you're paying?
Right. Yep.
Not many. I know because I've talked to them.
So those accountants out there, make sure you're looking at the big picture.
There's not a great solution for that either.
Well, no, it is difficult, and it's part of what we have to grapple with in the increasingly complex modern world, right?
Yeah, there is. It is.
All right, Chuck, closing thoughts.
Well, I would just implore everyone to just get in a room and brainstorm people. I think brainstorm with people. I think brainstorming is best done around a round table, preferably with beer. Okay. After the second beer, somebody says something ridiculous. And it only takes one person to say, you think you're being funny. But if we take your idea, which is blue, and turn it purple, you might be onto something really big and really different. But if you're just thinking you got all the answers and you're just going to keep making incremental progress, you are going to get left behind because everything has a life. And you best get started soon because you don't know when the next upset is coming for your apple cart.
That's right.
You need to think differently, not better, not incremental, different.
That is a good closing thought, Chuck. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Jim. You're the best.
Well, when we first met and we had that first discussion, I'm like, I gotta have you on my show because this was very educational. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I learned a lot listening to you. I never would have, God, energy drinks.
How about it?
I'm glad I'm in the defense widget business.
For sure. So thanks again. And as always, thanks to those of you guys in the audience. You are why we're here. And we're here at least every Tuesday, sometimes even on Thursdays as well. Keep tuning in. We'll keep making shows. I can't promise they're all going to be as educational as what Chuck brought us today, but they're all going to be at least a little bit educational. So thanks again for Manufacturing Talks. Jim Vinosky signing off. So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.